Did you not love that rally in Grand Rapids? Unbelievable. We got all the highlights. If you missed it, welcome to Hannity and a busy news night. Rush Limbaugh will be joining us tonight. Don Jr. also joining us moments away. But first, President Trump, he just wrapped up a massive rally in Western Michigan where, by the way, 140,000 people wanted to go to a 15,000-seat arena. And he was touting his impressive record of accomplishments, the ones the media never talk about. And despite facing a political witch hunt for over 2 years, the president has guided this country on the right path with regulations and tax cuts and energy independence for the first time in 70 years, a booming economy, record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, and youth unemployment. The U.S. is now again the leader and the envy of the world. Why do you think so many people want to come here? Now, the haters were wrong. The media lied for 2 consecutive plus years. The deep state, thankfully, has now been exposed, and those responsible will be held accountable. For the president, who promised to make America great again. When people wear that hat, it's a trigger for the left. Promises made, promises kept. Let's take a look.
This has been an incredible couple of weeks for America. The economy is roaring. The ISIS caliphate is defeated 100%. And after 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead.
The president, the crowd on fire tonight. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we have a huge announcement. Big at the end of the show. All right, so while we have been busy reporting the truth, what's happened in the rest of the media? They have been waging, through a psychotic rage, a political war against the president, and also we, the people, the smelly Walmart people, the irredeemable deplorables. And while we have been driven by facts, and while we don't rush to judgment, we believe in due process, they have been blinded by hatred and rage. That's why we make sure we get it right on this program. Clearly, almost every big story, they get it wrong. That's why poor Rachel Maddow, with her tinfoil hat conspiracy hat, has lost all credibility. Why CNN and NBC are now experiencing dramatic ratings decline so precipitously, it's unreal and deserved. And that's why the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, Adam Schiff, the only one left standing, facing urgent calls, rightly so, to resign from his position atop the House Intel Committee. Take a look.
Your willingness to continue to promote a demonstrably false narrative is alarming. The findings of the special counsel conclusively refute your past and present assertions and have exposed you as having abused your position to knowingly promote false information. As such, we have no faith in your ability to discharge your duties in a manner consistent with your constitutional responsibility and urge your immediate resignation as chairman of the committee.
I think it's immoral. I think it's unethical. I think it's unpatriotic. And yes, I think it's corrupt and evidence of collusion. I don't think it's okay that his attorney lied to our committee. There's a different word for that than collusion, and it's called compromise. I will not yield. Mr. Ambassador,
you gentlemen, yield because you just made some things about all of us that I think we all should get the opportunity to respond to. You're going to say we.
Now, remember, it was known leaker and liar Adam Schiff, we call him the cowardly Schiff on this program, who claimed to have clear evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. He was promising that. Now that, of course, Robert Mueller's all-powerful 22 months, $25 million probe found nothing, as did the 9-month investigation of the FBI and the House Intel, Senate Intel committees. He is in Congress still claiming to have the smoking gun evidence that those 4 investigations did not find. President Trump, well, he's calling out the cowardly Schiff. Take a look.
Little pencil neck Adam Schiff. He's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen. He is not a long ball hitter. But I saw him today. well, we don't really know. There could still have been some Russia collusion. Sick. These are sick people. And there has to be accountability because it's all lies, and they know it's lies.
There has to be accountability. The president's right. He was on fire tonight. Now, we have invited many times the cowardly Schiff on this program. Present his damning evidence, the one that the FBI, the House Intel, the Senate Committee, and Robert Mueller didn't find about Russia collusion. Come make your case. He's always declined coming on this program, and I offered 3 hours of radio. That's because he's been lying to you, the American people, for political gain. But guess what? We're announcing tonight on this program that I have my own dossier on the cowardly Schiff. Basically, him in his own words for 2+ years. We'll play him in his own words. Now, remember when he actually was caught on tape colluding with people that he actually believed were Russian sources, trying to get compromising materials on Trump to impact our electoral system. Oh, he's caught on tape colluding. You cannot make this up. This is how dumb this man is. Take a look.
And she met with Trump and she brought him 1-hour Russian girl, celebrity Olga Buzova, who also known as a person with a strange reputation.
Olga, and how do you spell her name?
Olga Buzova.
And what's the nature of the compromise?
Well, there were pictures of naked Trump.
And so Putin was made aware of the availability of the compromising material?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. We will be back in touch with you through our staff to make arrangements to obtain these materials for our committee and for the FBI, and I appreciate you reaching out to us.
It's like the greatest tape we ever play. He's caught on tape colluding with Russians. Unbelievable. Now, California's 28th district, well, you obviously could do better. Schiff should resign as a disgrace. But Schiff is not the only bad actor who has been utterly humiliated by this probe. Also disgraced, CIA director turned NBC, MSNBC, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory network hack, John Brennan. He's called the president on multiple occasions a traitor, pushing collusion conspiracies as utter fact almost every day. And it turns out, yeah, he was lying on an extreme level. And tonight we're learning something very damning about John Brennan, and we will follow this story. Rand Paul, earlier today, tweeting out a high-level source telling him that it was Brennan who insisted that the unverified, fake, Clinton bought and paid for Steele dossier with Russian lies included in the intelligence report, that Brennan should be asked to now testify under oath in Congress as soon as possible. In other words, Brennan used his official position as CIA director to validate the phony Russian Clinton bought and paid for dossier. In other words, was he involved in this hoax? Was he trying to set Donald Trump up from the get-go? Now, that would be a blatant abuse of power. So how is this corrupt, discredited con man? How does he have a job at NBC? Andy Lack, phone, might want to talk to him. Now, it's our promise to you, and we take this seriously. Every single night, every single person, every member of the deep state, not rank and file FBI, they're awesome, the greatest law enforcement agency on the planet. But the others, the few, we will hold accountable. And with the help of key lawmakers, dedicated investigators, equal justice under our law, equal application of our laws will happen. Our constitutional rights will be upheld. Now, take, for example, ranking Intel member Doug Collins. Today, he followed up again, releasing even more transcripts from his committee's closed-door hearings, things we'd never heard before. Now, this batch included testimony from Nellie Ohr. Remember, Nellie worked hand-in-hand with Christopher Steele of Fusion GPS. And he just happened to be married to the wife of disgraced DOJ official Bruce Ohr. He was once the 4th highest-ranking member at the DOJ. Now, thanks to her released testimony, this is what we learned today. Nellie Ohr admitted to meeting with Christopher Steele one day before the FBI launched its counterintelligence probe into Trump and Russia in 2016. One day before. Surprise, surprise. And her DOJ husband, Bruce Ohr, was at the meeting. And according to her words and transcript, we learned tonight that Nellie Ohr was instructed to dig up dirt on Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. And lo and behold, guess what? Who ended up being targeted by the special counsel? Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. And it doesn't stop there. She also admits to targeting Donald Trump Jr. and even the president's wife, Melania. And don't forget, as reported by The Hill's John Solomon, Nellie Ohr even gave her husband a flash drive with her bought and paid for Russian lies in the hopes that he would disseminate it throughout the DOJ and the FBI. Remember, it was leaked to the media before the election. Why? To influence the election on behalf of Hillary Clinton. That's not all. Now, thanks to Ohr's testimony, we know that a key source for Fusion GPS is the very same Ukrainian lawmaker who is accused of timing the release of sensitive information about Paul Manafort back in 2016 in order to help Hillary Clinton win the election. Ukrainian interference in our elections with Hillary, with real evidence. They have a tape in that case. Now, get this. Irony of all ironies. A court in Ukraine ruled back in December those actions amounted to meddling in the 2016 American presidential election. So, yeah, there was collusion in 2016, bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign, the DNC. Now, on the good side, let not your hearts be troubled. The deep state's day of reckoning is just around the corner. Next week, Congressman Devin Nunes will be issuing criminal referrals, many of them targeting those who have lied to Congress, committed a criminal conspiracy. There are going to be people now investigated, as we have been calling for over 2 years. President Trump has also, last night on this program, he has vowed to release all FISA documents surrounding Carter Page, a Trump campaign associate. They spied on him. They denied him his constitutional rights at the height of the election, which gave him a backdoor to spy on the Trump campaign. A few corrupt deep state bureaucrats, with the help of Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for phony, lying Russian dossier. Now, earlier, President Trump had this to say about the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in American history that the media has ignored. Take a watch.
The Russia witch hunt was a plan by those who lost the election to try and illegally regain power by framing innocent Americans, many of them. They suffered with an elaborate hoax. They wanted to destroy a movement like our country has never seen before. The Democrats have to now decide whether they will continue defrauding the public with ridiculous partisan investigations, or whether they will apologize to the American people.
I've long said that President Trump is the disruptor we need in the Oval Office. He's not the establishment. The swamp needs to be drained. And you know what? Iconoclastic, fighting to keep promises. Imagine that from a politician. He has, from the get-go, challenged all conventional thinking, and in doing so, exposed a dark, bureaucratic underbelly that is within our federal government. In doing so, he really is making America great again. And his statistics, well, they speak for themselves. According to Obama's former Attorney General, though, Eric Holder, America, the country we love that beat back fascism and Nazism and communism and imperial Japan, yeah, is not a great country. Never was.
When I hear these things about let's make America great again, I think to myself, well, exactly when did you think America was great? It certainly wasn't when people were enslaved. It certainly wasn't when women didn't have the right to vote. It certainly wasn't when the LGBT community was denied the rights to which it was entitled. It takes us back to, I think, an American past that never, in fact, really existed.
No, never a perfect country, but we have paid the price for freedom. For more people on the face of this earth, there's never been a country that has accumulated more power, abused it less, and used it for the advancement of the human condition more than the United States of America. I'm pretty sure Holder won't be the last successful, wealthy figure in the Democratic Party. Really, you want to run on trashing the greatness of America? But tonight, the good people of Michigan, they have a very different take. Come 2020, America's greatness will prevail. Let's watch.
Each of us here tonight is united by the same timeless values: We believe in the American Constitution and the American rule of law. We believe in the dignity of work and the sanctity of life. We believe that faith and family, not government and bureaucracy, are the true American way. We believe in religious liberty, the right to free speech, and the right to keep and bear arms.